In 1873, Colorado Territory, Sarah Whitmore faced the cruelest betrayal when her own parents traded her like common cattle, believing a barren woman held no value in the harsh frontier lands. Yet fate had other plans when a widowed father of 5 saw within her a spark of worth that she herself had long forgotten. As the mountain winds howled, they carried whispers of something unexpected possibility. Could a woman deemed worthless by society become the beating heart of a family yearning for motherly love? Sarah's trembling feet struck the wagon's wooden planks as her father's angry fist rattled the side. "Out now, girl. Time to meet your new master." The year 1873 had brought nothing but misfortune to the Whitmore homestead in Colorado Territory, and Sarah knew she'd become their greatest disappointment. Her fingers clutched desperately at the small cloth sack containing her worldly possessions. Through the wagon's canvas covering, she heard men's voices discussing her worth as if she were a broken mare up for auction. "She seems strong enough," one man commented. His heavy boots crunched in the dirt below. "But they say she's barren," Sarah's father spat contemptuously. 3 years wed to Thomas Brennan without a single child to show. Doctor claims her womb is defective. Though she can cook clean and reads better than most men around here. The crisp autumn breeze cut through the wagon's covering, causing Sarah to tremble. Peering through a tiny tear in the fabric, she observed the men circling like vultures. Several wore cruel expressions. Others gazed at her with predatory eyes that made her insides churn. Yet one man stood apart from the others, and something about his demeanor seemed distinctly different. This gentleman was tall, dark-haired with thoughtful eyes. His clothes were well kept, though his hands showed signs of honest labor. While others joked crudely about purchasing damaged goods, he remained silent, observing the scene with evident disapproval. "What do they call her?" the tall man inquired. Sarah's father appeared taken aback by the question. Sarah Whitmore. What difference does it make? She'll respond to whatever name you choose." "It makes a difference to me," the man stated resolutely. Sarah's heart fluttered unexpectedly. No one had asked her name in months. Her former husband had addressed her simply as woman or wife, but never Sarah, especially after learning of her barrenness. Her parents had taken to calling her the burden when they thought she couldn't hear. "Can she speak for herself?" the tall man pressed. Sarah's father's expression darkened with irritation. "Of course she can speak. Too much truth be told. Always questioning things always buried in those books. That's likely why she can't fulfill a woman's proper duty." And the tall man approached the wagon with measured steps. "Miss Sarah, would you kindly step out here?" The gentle request, punctuated with "please," struck Sarah deeply. Such courtesy had become foreign to her ears. Gathering her courage, she pushed through the canvas flap. The bright sunlight assaulted her vision after the wagon's darkness. As her eyes adjusted, she found herself under the scrutiny of every man present. Several faces showed clear disappointment, deeming her appearance inadequate. Others nodded thoughtfully as if calculating whether she might be worth their investment. But the tall man's expression held only compassion. "Miss Sarah," he spoke softly. "I'm Samuel McCready." He continued explaining that he had 5 children and maintained a farm 10 miles distant. He needed assistance caring for his family. Would she consider working for them, not being owned? Sarah glanced at her father, whose face had turned crimson with rage. She observed the other men murmuring about Samuel's unusual approach. When her gaze returned to Samuel McCready, she recognized something long absent from her life: kindness. "Yes, sir," she responded quietly. "I would." Samuel acknowledged her response with a nod and reached for his pocket. He produced a sum of money that exceeded anything Sarah had ever witnessed, passing it to her father. Instead of departing, he turned back to her. "Have you collected your belongings from the wagon?" Sarah lifted her modest bag. "This is all." Samuel's frown deepened. "These are your only possessions," her father interjected hastily. "She's never needed much. not one for extravagance. But Samuel's attention remained fixed on Sarah. Is there anything else you wish to take? Anything that belongs to you. Sarah's thoughts drifted to her mother's cherished rocking chair in their cabin, her neglected garden withering behind the house, and her secret reading spot by the creek. No, sir, she replied. Nothing else is mine. Samuel studied her intently. Then he performed an unexpected act that astonished everyone, Sarah included. He removed his warm coat and draped it over her shoulders. Well then, he declared, let's head home. As they walked toward his waiting horse and wagon, her father's voice followed them. She's your burden now, McCready. Don't come complaining when she fails you. Sarah maintained her forward gaze. For the first time in 3 years, she moved toward something willingly, rather than being forcibly taken. The coat carried the scent of pine wood smoke, and an indefinable essence that provided comfort. Mr. McCready. She spoke as he assisted her into his wagon. Yes, Miss Sarah. Thank you for asking my name. Samuel's face softened into a genuine smile, the first authentic expression of warmth Sarah had encountered in what felt like an eternity. Everyone deserves the dignity of their name, he stated simply. As their wagon departed from the trading post, Sarah's gaze drifted to the vast Colorado territory. Skye daring to entertain the possibility that her fortune might finally be turning. That morning, Samuel McCready had journeyed to Morrison's trading post with winter provisions in mind, not matrimony. Yet standing there witnessing Harold Whitmore attempt to sell his daughter as though she were damaged merchandise ignited a fierce anger within him. At 41, the widower understood intimately the weight of profound loss. His beloved wife Anna had passed 2 years prior, along with their unborn 6th child, during a difficult delivery. The tragedy left Samuel alone to care for 5 children, who needed his strength even when he felt utterly depleted. She's damaged goods. Whitmore's voice had cut through the crowd, but she'll still serve a purpose. Samuel's eyes fixed on the wagon concealing Sarah, his stomach churning. These men's casual discussion of a human being as mere property reminded him of wartime desperation when people traded whatever they possessed just to survive another sunrise. But that didn't justify such behavior. Name your price, called Pete Morrison, the trading post's owner, notorious for his cruelty toward both workers and wife. $50 takes her, Whitmore announced. Fair price for a woman who can work but won't bear children. The callous words struck Samuel like physical blows. He thought of his Anna, who had worked tirelessly for their children and farm until exhaustion claimed her. Her worth had far exceeded all of Colorado Territory's wealth, not for her ability to bear children, but for her intelligence, kindness, and gift of making their house truly home. $60, Samuel heard himself declare. All eyes turned his direction. Pete Morrison's laughter rang out. McCready, you're already drowning in children. What use have you for a broken woman? Samuel's fists clenched, though his voice remained steady. That's not your concern. Jake Thompson stepped forward. $70. My ranch hands need a cook. Samuel knew Thompson and the whispered tales of his treatment of female workers. No woman deserved such a fate, particularly one who had already endured so much suffering. $80, Samuel stated with conviction. Silence fell over the crowd. The sum represented 3 months' wages for most men. Harold Whitmore's eyes gleamed with avarice. Now that's proper business, Whitmore declared. $80 it is. But Samuel raised his hand in pause. One moment. I need to speak with the lady first, Samuel declared firmly. Whitmore's harsh laughter cut through the air. Speak with her. Whatever for. She'll follow orders like any other. Not under my roof, Samuel responded resolutely. In my home, everyone has the right to choose. His words stirred murmurs among the gathered men. The concept of female autonomy was foreign to most present, but Samuel's thoughts drifted to Anna, how she'd never hesitated to voice her opinions, how her challenges to his thinking had shaped him into a more thoughtful man. When Sarah emerged from the wagon, Samuel felt a sharp pang in his chest. Her gaunt frame and pallid complexion spoke of prolonged undernourishment. Though worn and mended, her dress remained spotless. Her eyes darted anxiously about, reminiscent of a cornered creature seeking escape. Yet when he addressed her with gentleness, requesting, rather than demanding, her demeanor transformed. Her posture straightened, her voice gained strength. When she agreed to accompany him, Samuel detected something unexpected in her words. Hope. The journey toward his farm began in silence. Sarah maintained maximum distance on the wagon seat, fingers interlaced tightly in her lap. Samuel comprehended her wariness. He remained unknown to her, and her past experiences gave her little reason to trust any man. "Would you tell me about your children?" Sarah's sudden query caught Samuel off guard. "Well, there's Jacob. At 17, he believes he's become the household patriarch since losing his mother. A fine lad, though he shoulders too much responsibility for his years." Sarah's understanding nod suggested familiarity with bearing heavy burdens. "Then there's Mary, 13, who's taken on everyone's care since Anna's passing. Brilliant mind matched only by her determination. The twins, Ben and Beth, both 10. Inseparable as can be. One never ventures without the other close behind. And sweet Emma." Samuel's tone softened. 6 years old now, her mother's memory grows dim, though the absence remains keenly felt. "They sound wonderful," Sarah observed. "They are, but they're missing." Samuel trailed off, uncertain how to continue. "A mother's presence," Sarah completed softly. Samuel shook his head. "They need someone who values them, truly sees beyond their utility or consumption. Anna always maintained that children must know their worth extends beyond their capabilities, that their very being matters." Sarah remained silent for a considerable pause before voicing her concern. "What if I fail them? What if I prove inadequate?" Samuel regarded this woman abandoned by those meant to cherish her, and replied, "Miss Sarah, disappointment stems from demanding people be something other than themselves. I'm not asking you to replace Anna or achieve perfection," Samuel clarified softly. "My only hope is that you'll develop genuine care for my children, and perhaps allow them to care for you in return." As their wagon approached the farmhouse, Samuel noticed 5 eager faces pressed against the kitchen window pane. His children's expressions revealed a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The weight of their previous loss still lingered heavily. Samuel wondered if they could embrace this reserved woman, whose eyes held such profound sadness. "Are you prepared?" he inquired gently. Sarah drew in a steadying breath and nodded. As they made their way to the house, Samuel found himself harboring hope that perhaps they might help each other heal. He'd come to understand that the strongest families weren't necessarily bound by blood. Sometimes they were forged through choice. Suddenly, Emma McCready's piercing screams echoed from the old oak tree behind the house where she was stranded 20 feet above ground. Without hesitation, Sarah abandoned her modest belongings on the porch and rushed toward the commotion. Beneath the towering oak, 4 worried children gazed upward at their youngest sister, who clutched a thick branch like a terrified feline. "She followed Whiskers up there," Mary explained anxiously, twisting her hands. "Now she's too frightened to descend. Father's repairing fences in the distant pasture," Jacob informed them, his adolescent voice wavering with concern. "He won't hear our calls from there." Sarah examined the tree, carefully recalling her own childhood experiences climbing apple trees at her family's home. The oak's sturdy bark offered numerous secure grips. Without warning, she removed her weathered boots and began ascending. "Miss Sarah, what are you doing?" Mary exclaimed in surprise. "Retrieving your sister," Sarah replied, confidently, already several feet up. The children watched in awe as their unfamiliar newcomer navigated the tree with natural expertise. Sarah's muscle memory guided her movements until she reached Emma's branch. The child's face was stained with tears and sticky tree sap. "I'm scared to move," Emma whispered tremulously. "It's too far down." "I understand your fear," Sarah responded soothingly. "But I'll help you. We'll descend together, step by step." At what followed astonished everyone, Sarah included. Emma instinctively wrapped her tiny arms around Sarah's neck, holding tight. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah experienced the profound trust of a child, depending on her completely. They descended methodically, Sarah carefully guiding Emma's feet to each secure foothold. Upon reaching the ground, they found all 5 children regarding Sarah with newfound admiration. "Where did you learn such climbing skills?" Ben inquired, clearly impressed. "My father taught me at your age," Sarah responded, brushing tree bark from her skirt. "He believed every girl should know how to rescue herself." Jacob stepped forward, his eyes reflecting the same earnest intensity as his father's. Sarah couldn't help but notice the striking resemblance. "Thank you for helping Emma," he said solemnly. "Most ladies would have simply called for assistance." "I'm not like most ladies," Sarah responded, then immediately questioned the wisdom of such an admission. Mary's face brightened with her first genuine smile since Sarah's arrival. "That's precisely what we need here." The harsh realities of frontier life would overwhelm most genteel women within days, Mary explained. As they made their way back to the homestead, Sarah discovered more about the McCready children in those brief moments than she'd anticipated learning in weeks. Mary, she learned, had shouldered the burden of running the household since she was barely 11. Jacob, while dedicated to working the land alongside his father, harbored aspirations of becoming an educator. The twins Ben and Beth were as different as summer and winter. He found joy in caring for creatures while she lost herself in the pages of books. And little Emma, precious Emma, was their collective treasure, who simultaneously filled their hearts with joy and constant worry. Upon entering the house, Sarah finally glimpsed what would become her new residence. The kitchen, though spacious, was overwhelmed with disorder. Dishes accumulated everywhere, and garments hung from every conceivable hook. The sitting room contained sturdy furniture, but desperately needed feminine attention. Everything served a purpose, but beauty had been forgotten. "Papa does what he can," Mary explained, noting Sarah's observant gaze. "There's just never enough hours in the day." Sarah decisively rolled up her sleeves. "Let's see what improvements we can make before his return." What transpired next was unprecedented in the McCready household. Sarah approached tasks with both efficiency and instruction. She transformed cleaning into an organized system, turned cooking into a musical affair, and demonstrated clever techniques for nearly invisible mending. The true transformation became evident at dusk when Samuel returned from the fields. His home had undergone a remarkable metamorphosis, not merely tidied, but infused with warmth. Fresh bread's aroma wafted through the air. Candlelight danced across the dining table, and his children gathered around Sarah, who patiently guided Emma through her alphabet. "Papa," Emma exclaimed, rushing to embrace him. "Miss Sarah rescued me from the tree, then helped me cook, and she knows the loveliest mockingbird song." Samuel's gaze fell upon Sarah, who suddenly felt self-conscious. Her hair had escaped its pins during the tree rescue, and her apron bore evidence of their baking endeavors. "You've certainly had an eventful day," he observed. "It's been absolutely perfect," Sarah replied, sincerely. That evening, as they shared their first family meal together, an unmistakable shift had occurred. Emma insisted on claiming the seat beside Sarah. Mary eagerly sought to learn the bread recipe. Even Jacob appeared more at ease, as if sharing responsibilities with another adult had lightened his burden. But it was the easy flow of conversation that most surprised Sarah. In Sarah's past life, mealtimes had been hushed occasions where children dared not speak unless addressed. Here, stories flowed freely as each family member shared their daily experiences. Samuel engaged with each child individually, treating their words with genuine interest and respect. "Miss Sarah," Beth inquired during a momentary lull in conversation, "will you be staying with us for long?" The question lingered heavily in the air, much like the smoke drifting from the hearth. Sarah surveyed the table, meeting 5 expectant faces, some filled with hope, others with careful reserve, but all keenly awaiting her response. "I certainly hope to," she finally answered, "if you'll welcome me." As evening settled and the children retired to bed, Sarah found herself on the front porch, watching stars emerge above Colorado's majestic peaks. Samuel joined her, offering 2 steaming cups of coffee. "They've grown quite fond of you already," he noted. "They're wonderful children," Sarah responded. "You've done an admirable job raising them." Samuel remained thoughtful for a moment. "Life's been challenging since Ellen's passing. Mary's shouldered too much burden. Jacob's been forced to mature beyond his years. And the younger ones," he paused, "they require what all children need," Sarah offered. "Care, attention, and someone to make them feel valued." As they sat in companionable quiet, Sarah experienced something long forgotten: tranquility. The mountains stood as dark silhouettes against the star-studded sky, while a distant coyote called to its family. For the first time since her father had placed her in that wagon, Sarah dared to hope she'd discovered her true place. Yet unknown to her, her arrival had already drawn attention from others in the valley, not all of it favorable. The blow to Sarah's newfound contentment arrived with Mrs. Henrietta Caldwell, who approached the McCready house one gray November morning as early snow decorated the mountaintops. Mrs. Caldwell considered herself the community's moral compass, and the rumors about the McCready household deeply disturbed her. "Samuel McCready," she called out before dismounting her horse, "we must discuss this improper arrangement you've created." Sarah, hanging laundry behind the house, caught the sharp tone. Through the billowing sheets in the brisk wind, she glimpsed Mrs. Caldwell's severe expression and Samuel's startled face as he emerged from the barn. "Good morning, Henrietta," Samuel greeted courteously. "What brings you here today? Don't feign innocence, Mrs." Caldwell retorted. "The entire town buzzes about the unmarried woman residing in your home with those children. It's absolutely disgraceful." Sarah's hands froze on the clothespins. She had anticipated this confrontation, but hearing the accusation spoken aloud made her stomach twist with anxiety. Inside the house, Mary was conducting morning lessons with the younger children. But Sarah noticed Jacob's concerned face appear at the kitchen window. At 17, he fully comprehended the implications of Mrs. Caldwell's unexpected visit for their household. "Miss Sarah assists with household duties," Samuel responded evenly. "Nothing beyond that." "Nothing beyond that." Mrs. Caldwell's voice escalated. "A single woman dwelling beneath the same roof as a widower, sharing daily meals and life together. It's unseemly, Samuel, and you're well aware." Sarah longed to vanish, to dissolve into the dreary November atmosphere, and spare this deserving family from the controversy her presence had created. She began collecting the partially dried garments from the line, contemplating gathering her modest possessions and departing before causing further distress. But Emma suddenly emerged from the house, her face glowing with enthusiasm. "Miss Sarah, see what I've written." The 6-year-old rushed toward her, clutching a slate covered with uneven letters. Mrs. Caldwell's piercing gaze fixed upon the child's clear fondness for Sarah, her expression hardening further. "And what sort of impact is this woman having on your children?" she challenged Samuel. "A positive one," Jacob's voice carried from the porch. The young man stepped outside his expression, resolute. "Miss Sarah helps Emma practice her letters daily. She's teaching Mary about creating remedies from natural herbs. She rescued Emma from a tree when she was trapped." "Jacob," Samuel cautioned softly, but his son persisted. "And she's brought warmth back to this house for the first time since Mother passed." Mrs. Caldwell's complexion deepened to crimson. "Young man, you're speaking of matters beyond your understanding. There are appropriate ways to manage a household, and this certainly isn't one. What's appropriate about 5 children struggling to raise themselves?" Mary questioned, appearing in the doorway alongside Beth and Ben. "What's appropriate about forcing a 17-year-old boy to become the household head? What's appropriate about a 13-year-old girl handling all domestic duties?" Sarah watched in astonishment as the McCready children, her children, she realized, stood united in her defense. Yet she recognized the deeper issue. Mrs. Caldwell embodied the community's collective judgment, and communities wielded influence that individual families couldn't match. The fact remains, Mrs. Caldwell declared, reasserting control over the discussion. "Respectable people don't conduct themselves this way. Either make this woman your wife properly, or she must seek accommodation elsewhere." The word marry hung heavily in the crisp air like a challenge. Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment. Her relationship with Samuel McCready was barely more than that of 2 wounded souls offering mutual support for survival, not romantic partners envisioning a shared future. "That's quite enough," Samuel interjected with authority. "The management of my household remains my prerogative, Henrietta. Not yours nor the town's to dictate. When it impacts the moral fabric of our community, it becomes everyone's concern," Mrs. Caldwell retorted sharply. "There are established principles, Samuel, guidelines that respectable individuals must observe." "But what about the principle of helping others?" Emma's innocent voice pierced through the heated exchange. "Miss Sarah assists us every single day. Isn't that what we learn in church?" Sarah observed silently as Mrs. Caldwell struggled to formulate a response. The older woman quickly regained her composure. "Child, these are matters beyond your comprehension. There are appropriate ways for unmarried individuals to conduct themselves, and cohabitation isn't among them." As she prepared to depart, Mrs. Caldwell delivered her parting ultimatum. "I shall discuss this matter with Reverend Matthews and inform other families in the vicinity. They deserve to know what example is being presented to their children." After Mrs. Caldwell's departure, the McCready family lingered in the yard like shipwreck survivors, unsure if the worst had passed or was merely beginning. "Pay her no mind," Mary declared protectively to Sarah. "She's nothing but a bitter woman with too much time and too little purpose." But Sarah understood the deeper implications. Mrs. Caldwell represented Cedar Ridge's established society, and their censure could severely impact the McCready family's life. Samuel might lose customers, the children could face ostracism at school, and the family risked becoming outcasts in a community they relied upon for their livelihood. That night, as Sarah prepared dinner alongside unusually subdued children, she reached a painful conclusion. Once the children were asleep, she would discuss leaving with Samuel. Though departing would crush her spirit, staying might destroy the precious family she'd grown to cherish. Unknown to her, Samuel wrestled with identical thoughts, while Jacob, having overheard Mrs. Caldwell's menacing words, was formulating a plan that would alter their future forever. As darkness descended upon the mountains, the first snowflakes began falling, bringing with them the harsh reminder that winter approached when the McCready family would need their unity more than ever. But would external pressures tear them apart before spring's arrival? Suddenly, a massive pine tree thundered down mere feet from their home, narrowly missing the roof and effectively imprisoning the McCready family within their log cabin for what would become winter's most memorable week. Sarah's chest tightened as she watched Samuel and Jacob inspect whether the fallen tree had compromised their only exit. Through ice-glazed windows, she observed snow accumulating higher than a person's height, while wind screamed like ravenous predators. "We're trapped until the storm subsides," Samuel declared, brushing snow from his jacket. "It might take days to clear a path." The children huddled near the fireplace, their faces betraying poorly concealed anxiety. Sarah observed Jacob's tense posture, reflecting his sense of duty. Mary's trembling hands, as she inventoried their provisions, and the twins instinctively drawing closer together. Emma silently climbed onto Sarah's lap, seeking the comfort that had become second nature between them. "Well," Sarah announced, maintaining a cheerful, steady tone, "this gives us time to complete all our unfinished projects." The events of the following week transformed their relationships completely. Confined within the cramped quarters, they uncovered aspects of each other, typically masked by daily routines. Sarah discovered Jacob's habit of keeping vigil during storms, alert for any threats to his family. She began joining him during the darkest hours, sharing tales from her youth that eventually coaxed out his first genuine smile in months. "You actually climbed the church bell tower?" Jacob inquired, his mature 17-year-old demeanor cracking to reveal childlike wonder. "Had to ring the bell when Pastor Thompson fell ill." Sarah chuckled. "Nearly gave the whole town a fright with that unexpected tolling." She noticed how Mary had seemingly forgotten the art of being young, shouldering responsibilities that even adults would find overwhelming. During their second day of confinement, Sarah initiated an impromptu flower battle while they prepared bread together. White powder danced through the air as Mary dissolved into fits of giggles, her carefully maintained composure melting into pure, uninhibited 13-year-old delight. "I haven't experienced joy like this since Mother passed," Mary confessed later, while helping Sarah remove flour from the overhead beams. The twins Ben and Beth craved excitement, even within their indoor constraints. Sarah transformed mundane household tasks into thrilling expeditions and contests. They competed to determine the fastest woodstacker transformed cleaning duties into epic battles against invisible dirt creatures and constructed elaborate fortress kingdoms from blankets. "Miss Sarah makes everything feel like an adventure," Beth confided to Ben, unaware that Sarah was within earshot. "Even dishwashing becomes playtime," Ben concurred. But it was Emma who truly captured Sarah's heart's deepest chambers. The 6-year-old had been inseparable from her damaged doll, its fabric body torn with stuffing, protruding through ever-expanding holes. On the storm's third day, Emma finally approached Sarah, eyes brimming with tears. "Could you mend her?" Emma pleaded. "Her stuffing keeps falling out, and I don't know how to help her heal." Sarah accepted the doll with tender care, recognizing its profound significance to the young girl. Emma observed each careful stitch with unwavering concentration. "Mother used to repair things too," Emma whispered. "But then she broke, and nobody could fix her." Sarah's hands froze mid-stitch. Gazing at the small child before her, Sarah suddenly comprehended why Emma held so desperately to her loved ones. "Sometimes broken things can't be restored to their original state," Sarah explained softly, "but they can become whole again, just differently." Emma gently traced the doll's fresh stitching. "Different in what way?" "Well, your doll was flawless when new, but now she bears this special mark where we mended her together. This scar shows she was cherished enough for someone to restore her wholeness." The little girl pondered this with the profound solemnity children reserve for life's important lessons. "Are you broken too, Miss Sarah?" The question emerged pure and innocent, free from judgment. Sarah surveyed the room, taking in the family she had unexpectedly become part of the children who now trusted her with their deepest fears and brightest hopes. "Perhaps a little," Sarah acknowledged softly. "But I've discovered that broken things can still serve a purpose, still receive love, still hold immense value." Emma bobbed her head, understanding flowing across her young features. "I'm happy you're broken like us. It means you truly understand." When the fourth day arrived, and cabin fever threatened to consume their spirits, Sarah introduced them to the lively game of charades. Samuel participated wholeheartedly, portraying various animals and professions with unexpected zeal. Watching their typically stoic father impersonate a chicken sent all 5 children into fits of uncontrollable laughter rolling across the wooden floor. "I haven't witnessed such joy in them since their mother's passing," Samuel confided to Sarah as evening descended. They needed permission to embrace childhood again. Sarah responded thoughtfully. We adults sometimes forget that healing flows through moments of joy just as much as through hard work. By the 5th day, they had established their own natural rhythm. Mornings were dedicated to education around the kitchen table, with Sarah guiding Emma through her letters, while Mary assisted the twins with their arithmetic lessons. Afternoons transformed into storytelling sessions, each person taking turns weaving tales about courageous pioneers and their loyal animal companions. Evenings filled with music, Jacob's harmonica notes floating through the air as their voices joined in songs that resonated against the log walls. The storm finally released its grip on the 7th day, but something fundamental had shifted within that snowbound dwelling. They had evolved beyond mere occupants sharing a roof. They had transformed into a family bound together by shared moments of joy, mutual challenges, and the deep trust that emerges only through weathering difficulties as one. When Samuel and Jacob finally carved a path to the barn to check their livestock, they discovered all animals safe and thriving. But the true revelation lay in what they had uncovered within themselves during their confined days. "Miss Sarah," Emma inquired, watching the men clear snowy paths, "will you remain with us always?" Sarah felt an unexpected certainty bloom in her heart, its strength catching her by surprise. "If your papa and all of you wish it, then yes," she replied. "We do want you," Mary declared resolutely, speaking for her siblings. Yet even as Sarah embraced this newfound belonging, she wondered what trials spring might bring to test these delicate bonds they had forged. Sarah was hanging damp sheets on the clothesline when she spotted them ascending the mountain path, 2 mounted figures approaching with the purposeful stride of those bearing unwelcome tidings. Her fingers stilled on the clothespins as she recognized her father, Harold Whitmore's hunched shoulders and hostile bearing. The man beside him maintained a rigid posture, and when he removed his hat to wipe his brow, Sarah's heart plummeted. Thomas Brennan, the man she had once called husband, had tracked her to Colorado territory. "Sarah," her father's voice sliced through the spring morning like a sharp blade through wood, "it's time to end this nonsense and return home where you belong." The children, hearing the commotion, rushed from their various tasks. Jacob emerged first, his fingers instinctively seeking the familiar comfort of the rifle stationed by the doorframe. Mary gathered her younger siblings behind her, embodying the protective instinct of a mother shielding her young. Emma, though too young to comprehend the full weight of the situation, pressed herself against Sarah's skirts, responding to the palpable tension in the air. Thomas Brennan descended from his mount with calculated precision, adjusting his pristine black suit as he surveyed the McCready homestead. His gaze, laden with contempt, swept across the property, as if mentally claiming ownership of everything within sight. When his eyes found Sarah, they carried a disturbing mixture of proprietary interest and revulsion that sent chills down her spine. "Sarah," he pronounced, his voice carrying the same cold authority that had haunted her memories. "I'm here to reclaim what's rightfully mine." "She isn't property to be claimed," Jacob interjected, his adolescent voice wavering slightly, but backed by unwavering resolve. Thomas's laughter shattered the morning air like splintering ice. "Mind your place, boy. This is adult business. A wife belongs to her husband until death parts them, and as I stand here very much alive, this woman returns with me." Samuel emerged from the barn with the measured caution of someone who'd weathered enough storms to recognize approaching danger. His keen eyes assessed the situation swiftly, the unwelcome visitors, his children's fearful expressions, Sarah's ashen face. "Gentlemen," Samuel addressed them, his tone courteous yet threaded with steel. "You're trespassing on my land. State your purpose." "I'm Harold Whitmore," the older man declared, puffing up with self-importance. "Her father. And this here's Thomas Brennan, her lawful husband. We've come to restore her to her proper place." "The lady isn't chattel to be claimed." Samuel countered his hand, casually finding rest near his belt knife. "She's family now." Thomas extracted folded documents from his coat. I hold legal proof. Our marriage certificate properly signed and witnessed in Kansas. She remains my wife, by both divine and earthly law. Emma's sobs pierced the air as she finally grasped that these strangers intended to take away the woman who had become her mother, in everything but blood. Mary enveloped her sister protectively while the twins edged closer to Jacob. Sarah abandoned her responsibilities, Harold proclaimed, fled her husband's home without consent, though Thomas here shows Christian charity in willing to take her back despite her failings. What failings? Samuel's voice dropped dangerously low. She's barren, Thomas stated coldly, as if discussing defective merchandise. Can't bear children, but I've decided having someone to maintain a household outweighs having no wife at all. The cruel words struck Sarah like physical blows, resurrecting all the shame and inadequacy she'd fought to leave behind. For a heartbeat, Sarah felt herself diminishing into the worthless vessel these men had always claimed her to be. But then Emma's tiny fingers intertwined with hers, while Mary shifted protectively to her side, and Jacob stepped forward with unwavering determination. Even the twins, Ben and Beth, barely 10 years old, positioned themselves like miniature guardians ready to defend their chosen family. You're wrong about her, Emma declared, her 6-year-old voice ringing with conviction. Miss Sarah isn't damaged. She cares for us better than anyone ever has. And she's not Miss Sarah anymore, Mary interjected with the poise of her 13 years. She's our mama now, and we want her to stay forever. Thomas's expression contorted with mounting rage. Children should hold their tongues. Sarah, gather your belongings. We're departing immediately. But the months with the McCready family had transformed Sarah profoundly. The woman who once bowed to every harsh word and cruel verdict now felt strength coursing through her veins like a mountain stream. No, she stated firmly. Her response reverberated in the spring air like distant thunder. No, Harold bellowed, his face reddening. You have no right to refuse your father and husband. I'm not refusing my husband, Sarah responded, her voice gaining power with each syllable. I'm refusing a man who discarded me like refuse and only seeks my return because his second choice proved equally disappointing. She pivoted to face Thomas, squarely meeting his gaze without wavering. You divorced me, as I recall. Proclaimed to everyone that I was worthless because I couldn't bear you sons. But I've discovered something during my absence. I can mother children who need nurturing. I can create a family through love rather than blood. That's not how matrimony functions, Thomas growled. You remain mine until I decree otherwise. She belongs to herself, Samuel declared resolutely. And if she chooses to remain here, that's precisely what will happen. The confrontation was escalating toward an inevitable turning point. But Sarah recognized in Thomas's expression that he wouldn't surrender what he considered his property without a fight. The spring breeze intensified, whispering through the fresh foliage and carrying the fragrance of new growth. Change was descending upon the McCready homestead, whether they welcomed it or not. Sarah's hands trembled as she distributed coffee into 4 cups. The kitchen seemed to have shrunk to the size of a prison cell, with Thomas and her father occupying one side of the wooden table, while Samuel maintained his vigilant position by the window. Outside, the children pressed their faces against the glass, struggling to comprehend why their peaceful world had suddenly turned threatening. I've come to reclaim what's rightfully mine, Thomas announced, extracting papers from within his coat. His voice rasped like grinding stones. This marriage contract proves Sarah remains my lawful wife. The legal system supports my position. Samuel's jaw tensed, though his voice remained steady. The law also protects individuals from being treated as mere property, like livestock or possessions. Sarah deserves to chart her own course. Her father adjusted his position uncomfortably in his chair, showing the first signs of unease since his arrival. Sarah, don't act rashly. Thomas is extending another chance at a genuine marriage. Most gentlemen wouldn't consider reconciling with a wife unable to bear children. The mention of children struck Sarah like a physical blow. For 3 long years, society had made her feel defective because her body failed to meet their expectations. But as her gaze swept across the kitchen, where she'd prepared countless meals, assisted with studies, and tended to minor injuries, something resolute awakened within her. "Tell me truthfully." "Thomas." Sarah began, her voice gaining conviction with each passing moment. "During our 3 years together, did I maintain an immaculate household?" Thomas's brow furrowed. "Indeed, but did I prepare your daily meals? Did I launder and repair your garments when necessary?" "Certainly. But that's beside the point. Was I by your side during your illness? Did I contribute to your business through customer relations? Did I ever deceive or betray you?" Thomas's complexion deepened. "A woman's fundamental purpose is to exist as a human being." Sarah's voice resonated like lightning. The children playing outside startled at the sound. "I am a human being, not merely a malfunctioning vessel for procreation." She turned to confront her father, seeing him with newfound clarity for the first time. "You discarded me because you couldn't recognize my worth beyond my inability. But Samuel perceives my true essence." Samuel stepped forward, his presence emanating quiet authority. "Sarah has nurtured my children for nearly a year. She's improved their literacy, helped them overcome their anxieties, transformed this house into a cherished home. She's invaluable to us." "But she can't provide you with sons," Thomas roared, striking the table forcefully. Little Emma burst into the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't take Miss Sarah away," she pleaded, embracing Sarah's waist. "She mends everything broken. She shares stories with us. She bakes the finest apple pie in existence." Mary followed Emma inside, her youthful features set with determination. "Sarah helps me manage the overwhelming responsibilities of caring for everyone. Before her arrival, I shouldered every burden alone. Now I can experience childhood occasionally." Jacob materialized in the doorframe, his teenage form commanding the entrance. "If you attempt to remove Sarah against her wishes, you'll face opposition from every man in the valley. We understand the true meaning of family, and it doesn't involve forcing people where they're unwilling to go." The twins, Ben and Beth, squeezed past their older brother. "Sarah teaches us our numbers," Ben announced with pride. "And she shows us how to catch lightning bugs," Beth chimed in. "Mama did that before she went to be with the angels." Thomas surveyed the unified family standing before him. His self-assured demeanor began to waver. "This isn't proper. A man should cherish his wife like a precious gift, not treat her as a possession," Samuel responded. His words carried the weight of someone who had earned his standing through actions. "You discarded Sarah once. You forfeit the right to reclaim her simply because your subsequent choice proved unsatisfactory." Sarah felt something transform within her heart, like a sealed chamber finally opening after years of darkness. She gazed at Thomas, who had once diminished her spirit, then at her father, who had traded her like damaged merchandise. Finally, her eyes settled on Samuel and his children, who had taught her the true meaning of belonging. "I'm staying right here," she declared, her voice unwavering and resolute. "This is where I belong now. These children require my presence, and I need them equally. Thomas, keep your legal documents. I choose to remain where I'm valued for my true self, not for what I might provide." The quiet that followed resembled the stillness before sunrise. Thomas's countenance shifted through various emotions before settling into bitter resignation. Her father appeared bewildered, as though truly seeing his daughter as an individual for the first time. "This matter isn't settled," Thomas grumbled, though his words lacked conviction. Samuel positioned himself beside Sarah, his presence as steadfast as the mountains themselves. Yes, it is. And should you return to trouble my family, you'll answer to me and every honorable man in Colorado Territory." As Thomas and her father prepared their departure, Sarah felt Emma's tiny fingers intertwine with hers. The young girl gazed up, her eyes radiating pure trust. "You'll stay forever, won't you, Miss Sarah? Forever and always, precious one." Sarah vowed, each word sincere. Through the window, she watched her past disappear down the mountain path, carrying away years of self-doubt and worthlessness. What remained was a kitchen filled with people who cherished her completely. The bells of Cedar Ridge Community Church pealed across the valley that Sunday morning, summoning folks to face perhaps the most challenging decision of their lives. News had raced through the small town quicker than a prairie fire. The confrontation at the McCready homestead, Sarah's decision to stay, and Thomas Brennan's furious exit. Now everyone must determine their true beliefs about family love and the possibility of new beginnings. Sarah sat beside Samuel in the wagon, her heart pounding against her chest. She hadn't attended church since arriving in Colorado, too ashamed of her circumstances to face the scrutiny of respectable townspeople. But today felt remarkably different. Today, she chose to stand tall and face judgment regardless of the consequences. "We could turn around now," Samuel whispered as the church came into view. The lake would make a perfect spot for a Sunday meal instead. Emma fidgeted excitedly between them on the wagon seat. "But I want the whole town to know that Miss Sarah is truly our family now." "Emma speaks the truth, Papa," Mary called from behind them. "We shouldn't hide our family just because others might disapprove." The church steps hummed with conversation that fell silent when the McCready wagon arrived. Sarah felt countless gazes upon her, as Samuel's strong, reassuring hands helped her descend. The children gathered protectively around her, their devotion clear to all onlookers. As they entered the sanctuary, whispers trailed them down the main aisle like autumn leaves rustling in the wind. The McCready family occupied a full pew with Sarah, nestled between Mary and Emma. She sensed both condemnation and acceptance from different directions, as though an invisible line divided the congregation. Reverend Matthew took his place at the pulpit, his compassionate gaze sweeping across the assembled faces. He was a wise soul who recognized that his words today would influence how this community embraced or rejected the McCready family for generations to come. "Today, I want to speak about Ruth," he commenced, his words resonating throughout the wooden sanctuary. Ruth was a woman faced with choosing between security and righteousness. She had the option to return to her birth family where everything was predictable and familiar. Yet she opted to remain with Naomi, her mother-in-law, declaring, "Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people." Sarah felt her eyes well up as the Reverend proceeded. Ruth created her family through conscious choice, not merely through bloodlines. She became a forebearer of King David and Jesus himself, demonstrating that God works through any family founded on devotion and dedication. Following the service, Sarah stood outside the church with Samuel and the children, uncertain about their reception. Several people hurried past with brief acknowledgments, visibly uneasy with the circumstances. Others paused to discuss the weather and harvests, treating them just as they always had. Then Margaret Patterson stepped forward. As the mill owner's wife and Cedar Ridge's unofficial social authority, her next actions would shape the community's response. "Miss Sarah," Mrs. Patterson addressed formally, then astonished everyone by clasping Sarah's hands. "I've been observing your family throughout winter and spring. I've witnessed how those McCready children have flourished in your care." Behind her, a cluster of women assembled. The schoolteacher, the physician's wife, the widowed general store proprietor, and various farmers' wives. They had reached a collective decision, and their unified stance would resonate more powerfully than any single voice. "We've discussed among ourselves," Mrs. Patterson proceeded, "and we want to assure you of your place in our community. We've observed what genuine mothering entails, and it's not about childbirth. It's about giving love. Mrs. Henderson, the schoolteacher, moved forward. Mary's reading has shown remarkable improvement since you began assisting her at home, and Jacob has gained more responsibility in 1 year than many boys acquire in 5. Emma speaks of you endlessly, contributed Dr. Morrison's wife. She brightens whenever she mentions Miss Sarah. That's something impossible to fabricate, the blacksmith's widow affirmed. I've observed you at the store consistently patient with all 5 children, ensuring each feels valued. That requires a special talent not every woman possesses. Sarah felt profound gratitude overwhelm her. These women had been watching, evaluating, and deliberating. Their judgment was acceptance proclaimed publicly for the entire town to witness. Young Dr. Morrison approached the gathering. Mr. McCready, I hope you'll pardon my saying, but your family has exemplified health and contentment this past year. Whatever arrangement you've established is evidently benefiting everyone involved. Samuel's expression radiated genuine joy. Thank you, Doctor. Fate had blessed them with this serendipitous union. Across the churchyard, Sarah observed a cluster of men engaged in hushed, intense conversation. Thomas Brennan and her father stood among them, their countenances clouded with resentment at the community's unmistakable endorsement of the McCready household. Thomas caught her gaze and made a motion that might have been intimidating, but it appeared trivial and ineffective against the wall of support encompassing her. Emma pulled gently at Sarah's dress. Miss Sarah, does this mean everyone accepts us now? Sarah lowered herself to meet the child's innocent gaze. It means those with pure hearts stand with us, precious one, and the opinions of others matter little. As the congregation began to scatter, families departing for their Sunday meals, Sarah experienced a buoyancy in her spirit that had eluded her for years. The community had made their declaration, choosing compassion over custom humanity, over harsh judgment. Shall we head home? Samuel inquired, extending his arm. Yes, Sarah answered the simple word, carrying more weight than any formal pledge she'd ever made. I'm ready to go home. The journey back to the homestead buzzed with animated conversation and mirth, the children energized by the morning's proceedings. Sarah observed the familiar terrain drift past, the protective mountains that had witnessed her metamorphosis, the valley that had become her haven, the path that led to the only true home she'd ever known. In their wake, the church bells persisted, their peals of acceptance echoing throughout the valley. A piercing cry shattered the morning's tranquility like lightning, splitting the sky, sending every bird in the vicinity soaring toward the distant peaks. Sarah released the basket of eggs she'd collected from the henhouse and sprinted toward the sound, her heartbeat thundering within her chest. Emma lay motionless at the base of the hayloft ladder, her tiny form contorted unnaturally, making Sarah's blood run cold. The child's complexion matched fresh linen, and a dark crimson pool slowly expanded beneath her golden tresses. Get your father, Sarah called to Jacob, who remained paralyzed in the barn's entrance. Terror etched across his features. Now, Sarah dropped to Emma's side, her trembling hands checking for signs of life. The little girl's chest rose and fell, but her eyes remained shut. Blood seeped from a gash on her forehead, and her left arm lay at an angle that clearly indicated fracture. Samuel burst into the barn, his work boots sliding across the hay-strewn floor. Behind him rushed Mary, the twins, and Jacob, their faces etched with the raw terror that surfaces when your entire world threatens to crumble before your eyes. How severe? Samuel asked, maintaining a steady voice despite his quivering hands as they gently touched Emma's face. She's breathing, but her arm's broken, Sarah responded, tearing her apron into strips to bandage Emma's head wound. We need Dr. Harrison immediately. The doctor's in Denver this week, Samuel said, and Sarah witnessed something shatter in his expression. Won't return until next Tuesday. The closest town with another physician was a 3-day journey through treacherous mountain passes that winter had rendered nearly impassable. Emma couldn't endure such a wait. Sarah gazed at the little girl's ashen face and reached a decision that terrified her more than anything she'd ever contemplated. "I can set the bone," she whispered. "My mother taught me when I was Mary's age. We're too remote to wait for doctors." Samuel fixed his eyes on her. "Sarah, if something goes wrong. If we delay, she might lose use of that arm forever," Sarah countered, meeting his gaze. "Or worse." Mary stepped forward, her youthful features resolute. "I'll assist. Just tell me what's needed." The following hour seemed to stretch into eternity for Sarah. She dispatched Ben to boil water and gather clean linens. Beth held Emma's legs steady, while Mary supported her shoulders. Jacob rode out to summon Mrs. Patterson, who had experience with both deliveries and broken bones. Sarah's hands moved with forgotten expertise, carefully probing Emma's arm to locate the break. The bone had fractured cleanly midway between elbow and wrist, fortunately not penetrating the skin. That offered some relief. "Hold her firmly," Sarah cautioned Mary and Beth. Then she realigned the bone ends. Emma's shriek brought moisture to everyone's eyes, but her arm now appeared properly aligned. Sarah secured it with makeshift splints, crafted from barnwood and cloth strips, following her mother's long-ago instructions from their Kansas homestead. Mrs. Patterson arrived as Sarah completed the bandaging, examined the work, and offered an approving nod. "Fine work," she commented. "That arm should mend properly if we keep it immobile." Emma regained consciousness that evening, requesting water and wondering about the worried faces surrounding her. She attempted to sit up, but winced when her arm refused to cooperate. "What happened to me?" she asked, her voice tiny and bewildered. Sarah perched on the bed's edge, gently smoothing Emma's hair away from the bandaged forehead. "You took a fall from the hayloft, precious one, but you're going to recover completely." "Did you fix me like you fixed my dolly?" Emma's small voice made Sarah's heart constrict. "Yes, sweetheart, just like your doll." Emma's face took on that solemn expression children wear when processing something significant. "Mama." "Sarah." "Yes, darling. I'm happy that you know how to make broken things better." Later that night, after Emma drifted off clutching Sarah's hand, Samuel discovered Sarah on the front porch, her eyes fixed on the starlit sky. Her body trembled violently, finally surrendering to the terror she'd masked throughout the day. "She could have died today," Sarah murmured. "What if I'd worsened her injury? What if the bone heals improperly? What if—" Samuel settled beside her, his presence radiating comforting warmth. "But she didn't die, and her arm will recover. You saved her, Sarah. You were precisely what our family needed in our darkest moment." Sarah rested against his shoulder, drawing strength from the steadfast presence that had guided their family through countless hardships. "I've never experienced such overwhelming fear." "That's what true courage is," Samuel replied, gently facing your fears and acting despite them. The following morning, Emma commanded Mary's pancake making from her seat at the kitchen table, her injured arm carefully supported in a sling. While the accident had rattled everyone, it had revealed something profound about the woman who'd become their family's cornerstone. Sarah Whitmore had first appeared as society's cast-off. Yet when crisis struck, she emerged as exactly the kind of person you'd want beside you during life's darkest moments. She wasn't merely someone who prepared their meals and maintained their clothes. She was a quick-thinking, courageous defender who'd fight for their family when circumstances demanded it. As Sarah observed Emma laughing at Ben's playful antics across the breakfast table, she recognized an internal transformation. For the first time since departing her father's household, she felt like more than just a useful addition to another's life. She'd become a guardian, a healer, someone whose presence meant the difference between security and vulnerability for those she cherished. The woman who once considered herself broken had demonstrated her ability to mend what mattered most to her new family, and that realization settled within her like newfound strength she never knew she possessed. Half a year later, on a morning when springtime painted Colorado's mountains with fresh, verdant hope, Sarah stood in her garden, witnessing something she'd never imagined possible. Emma darted between rows of vegetables, both arms functioning flawlessly, pursuing butterflies, and releasing laughter that floated like music on the mountain air. The arm had healed perfectly straight and strong, exactly as Mrs. Patterson had predicted, but something else had also mended. Something within Sarah herself that she was only now beginning to comprehend. "Mama Sarah, look what I gathered for you," Emma exclaimed, presenting a collection of vibrant wildflowers. The word mama still sent waves of warmth through Sarah's heart whenever it reached her ears. Not because she had physically brought this child into the world, but because they had mutually chosen to embrace each other with unconditional love. Samuel appeared at the garden entrance, his expression bearing the unmistakable signs of promising news. In his grasp was an official document adorned with elegant script on its exterior. "What have you got there?" Sarah inquired, brushing soil from her hands onto her apron. "It's correspondence from the Territorial Administration," Samuel replied, barely containing his enthusiasm. "Regarding our land petition," Sarah's heart leaped. They had spent countless months awaiting word about their homestead application's approval. Without legal claim to the property, everything they had painstakingly constructed could vanish as swiftly as dawn's frost. Samuel unfolded the letter with delicate precision, his gaze scanning the contents, while Sarah remained motionless, hardly daring to breathe. The children clustered nearby, instinctively aware of the moment's significance. "What does it say?" Mary questioned, anxiety evident in her tone. Samuel raised his eyes, his face illuminated by the most radiant smile Sarah had ever witnessed. "The claim is approved, 160 acres. The land is legally ours." The jubilation that erupted in the garden surpassed anything in Sarah's experience. The children hollered and twirled, Emma scattered her flowers skyward like celebratory petals, and Samuel lifted Sarah off her feet, spinning her until they both felt lightheaded with happiness. As the initial excitement subsided, Sarah realized this moment symbolized more than mere property ownership. It represented permanent belonging. It meant security in this place where she had discovered her true value. That evening, as the family gathered around their kitchen table for supper, Samuel rose in his characteristic manner that signaled important words to follow. "I've been contemplating what this land ownership means for our future." He began meeting the eyes of each child before settling on Sarah. "It means we can create concrete plans for tomorrow, real aspirations." He addressed Jacob, who had grown remarkably during the winter months. "Jacob, consider your life's path carefully. You could stay here and work the land alongside me, or pursue further education in Denver. Either choice has my full support." Jacob's expression brightened. "Truly, Pa, I could go to the city." "If that's your desire, we'll ensure it happens." Samuel turned to Mary. "Mary, you've managed this household with adult capability, but you deserve your youth too. Perhaps explore music or painting. Whatever captures your interest." Mary's cheeks flushed with pleasure. "I'd truly enjoy that, Papa." "Ben and Beth, your bright minds hold endless possibilities for your futures. We'll ensure you receive the education needed to forge your own paths." Samuel's gaze traveled across the table, meeting Sarah's eyes with profound tenderness. "And Sarah, my beloved wife, you've bestowed upon us a gift we never dreamed possible again." "What gift?" Sarah whispered softly. "The gift of hope. Faith that each sunrise brings better possibilities than the day before. You've demonstrated how broken pieces can transform into something beautiful, how families bloom from love rather than merely bloodlines, and how true worth stems from what we give, not what we produce." Emma tugged gently at Sarah's sleeve. "Mama Sarah, will this be our home forever and always?" Sarah glanced around the table, taking in each face that had become more precious to her than any treasure she could have imagined desiring. These children who called her Mama, not through the bonds of birth, but through the choice of shared life and love. This man who recognized her value when the world saw only her shortcomings. "Yes, precious one," Sarah responded, her voice resonating with unwavering conviction. "This will be our home forever and always." As night fell and the children drifted into peaceful slumber, Sarah and Samuel found themselves on their front porch, watching the stars emerge in the deepening twilight. The majestic mountains encircled them like protective sentinels, while the melodic babbling of the nearby creek provided a soothing lullaby. "Do you ever ponder what might have been if your father hadn't left you at that trading post?" Samuel inquired. Sarah contemplated the question thoughtfully. "I used to, but now I believe everything unfolded precisely as it was meant to. Every heartache, every rejection, every moment of feeling worthless, all guided me here, to this family, to this life. Would you ever consider reaching out to your father, letting him know how your life has flourished?" Sarah shook her head decisively. "He made his judgment about my worth long ago. I no longer need his validation to understand my true value." Samuel reached for her hand, his work-weathered fingers intertwining with hers. "And what was her true worth?" Sarah. McCready pondered. A gentle smile graced her lips as she reflected on the tangible evidence of her value. Emma's arm now fully healed under her care. Jacob's aspirations for higher education nurtured by her encouragement. Mary's growing musical talents fostered by her support. The twins' promising futures shaped by her guidance. The thriving garden that flourished beneath her tender touch. The harmonious household that ran seamlessly through her dedication. And the man at her side who recognized her inner strength rather than dwelling on her perceived limitations. "My worth," she declared softly, "is measured by what I choose to give, and I've chosen to pour my entire being into this family, this land, this precious life we've created together." The Colorado breeze, which once carried the bitter memories of abandonment, now wafted with the sweet fragrance of her blooming garden, the joyous echoes of her children's mirth, and the promise of countless tomorrows filled with transformative love. Sarah Whitmore. McCready had discovered life's most profound truth, that worth isn't bestowed or withdrawn by others. It's cultivated daily through conscious choices, unconditional love, and the resilience to rise above one's perceived limitations. As celestial streaks illuminated the mountain sky, Sarah's hand tightened around Samuel's.